Go ahead and get the recording started. It's 4 o'clock, 4:01 my time, but I'm always ahead. Um, Thanks for being here today. Welcome to the April edition of the High Performance Homes team. And the topic that was thrown around to start out with was about innies and outies, innies versus outies. Not talking about belly buttons, but windows. Although we could talk about belly buttons if you want, but we probably shouldn't. Um, Annette put in the chat box that she has to step away in about 30 minutes, but she wanted to vote for Outies. So, anybody else on Annette's side for Outies, and maybe somebody wants to explain what that is. I'm not sure. Being a guy from Southern Florida, um, all of our windows are innies from the sense that they're constructed inside the masonry opening, but that's not what we're talking about innies here today, are we?
That
No, the
that was my biggest question. What is the difference?
okay. So if you're doing rigid insulation on the outside of your exterior walls, which of course down in Florida you don't need to do, but up north people do. The question is whether you frame your window so the flange is like usual against the sheeting, or and then you have to, kind of finish out the trim and everything else. Or do you put it out so it still looks from the exterior that it's on the outside, in which case you have to adjust the structure around the window jamb and do some other things. They each require some extra work. Um, the opinions are kind of divided. Uh, I'll put the link in here. There's a link to Joe has written an article on it a few years ago, and I think he likes innies. Um, and then the article that you referenced, Steve, on the website through Green Building Advisor, they it's kind of tomato. It's going to be what people prefer. Um, the best description I heard, this was in the Green Building Advisor article, and it's really cute. Um, on a web builders forum, a Portland, Oregon architect recently posted the following comment on the topic. And here's the quote: Outie windows make for interior ledges for cats. Innie windows make for exterior ledges for pigeons. I suppose the perfect answer is a halfie, so the cat can sit and watch the pigeon. So that's kind of basically, in a nutshell, what it is. The Green Building Advisor article has a ton of links to details, descriptions of how one would do it. And I guess with an Outie, the window isn't completely structurally supported by the wall framing. Um, and then on an Innie, the inside's the same as usual, but you've got to do you've got to have a jamb that's extended. You've got to wrap your WRB around it. You've got to finish it off with the trim. So there's extra stuff going on either way. So the jury's kind of out. And we did rigid insulation on the Habitat Cottage project, but I don't remember how they did the windows. I drew them as innies, but I'm not sure if that's how they got done. And I emailed the construction supervisor, and he hasn't gotten back to me yet to let me know. But that's the only one I've done with rigid insulation in our climate. I have one coming up. It's a remodel and a restoration of the siding, and we don't know yet how he's going to frame it. It's in permits. So that's what I know. It seems like it's a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, depending on who's doing it and what their opinion about it is. And I'll post that website here.
My question, Vicky, is that if you're installing it on the outside of the insulation, the rigid insulation, some of that insulation gets to be like an inch and a half, 2 inches thick, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, how does that window attach in a way that it's not flimsy if you're using really long nails? I mean, is Is it
Yeah.
snug enough?
Well, and that's one of the issues is it's going to take a lot of care to frame that out in a way that the window is going to be supported. And that's one of the arguments against the Outies. I really don't have an opinion either way. I think, you know, if we're used to seeing the window kind of towards the edge of the outside of the building, that's what we usually see. If we're used to that and you want to do the window and outie, fine. In the Southwest, a lot of times with, you know, like the thicker adobe walls, it's going to be into the inside because it won't get as much sun exposure. One commenter in the Green Building article was saying that, like in Alaska or some northern places, they'd rather do innies because it protects the window a little more against wind and wind-driven rain and other elements. And it's just
Yeah, but
more
what?
protection to the window.
But how do you keep water from getting down if the window's an innie and you've got the insulation then on the outside of the flange of the window? What keeps water getting from between the insulation and the framing
The
via the
flashing
window?
details. The flashing details. You can flash the heck
Yeah.
out of it. Either way.
You still got to have a custom flashing either way. And if we do Outies, which is my preferred method, what we did is we did one with 2-inch insulation and one with 1-inch insulation, and we took and ripped down 2x to the thickness that we needed, and then we nailed them. Actually, I screwed them in because I was worried about anchoring as well. So we screwed them around the window flange opening, or the window opening, the rough opening, and then we tape everything first so that we get a good air seal and our bucks are protected as well. And then we set the window, typically set, and then we tape around that. And then I've got to bend which I go to a local fab shop, they'll make it for me, but we measure and we bend our window flashing. It goes down the wall, over the buck, down, and then over the window, and then it's got a little 45-degree or 30-degree kick. Structurally, it's like it's there, it's solid, it's not going anywhere. And then if you did an Innie, it's the same situation. You've got to custom make a flashing because you want to take that flashing from your sheathing and bring it out past your window and then all the way to the edge of your cladding, whatever it is, your siding, your brick, whatever. And then the only thing in there is you've got a final detail where you've got to case the window out on the outside, similar to what you do on the inside of a sheetrock wall with an Innie. With an Outie, it looks like the window is set traditionally when you're all said and done.
So when you did your Outies, did you frame basically kind of a box that was going to be the width of your foam and everything else?
Yeah, we did. Kevin, is the WRB only at the sheathing later? Yes. So we did frame. So we ripped a 2x4. So we had the 1.5 inch depth or width. I'm sorry, width, and then we ripped it to our depth on the 2-inch foam. You know, you've got 2 inches of foam plus a 1/2 inch rain screen, and then your siding goes there. So we ripped it 2.5 inches deep, so that way everything was nice and flush at the end, including after the rain screen. And then our WRB, we've done it with zip system sheathing. So the sheathing layer is our WRB, and we basically bring that around our window buck with tapes, the zip tapes, and then we actually flash the bottom seal with either liquid flashing or Proseco joint and seam filler, something like that. That way, and then everything's also, I'm a little overboard. We put the window seal at a 5-degree bevel, aiming outside,
Mhm.
so that if or when any water gets in there, or because you leave the bottom of the window uh, flange open for drainage, if any wind driven rain get up in there, it can drain back out. So
Now, Kevin, are you doing this with aluminum frame windows, vinyl windows, or are they uh, aluminum
I've done
clad?
it with vinyl. I've done it with vinyl and fiberglass.
Okay.
So aluminum we don't really typically use down here, because then you got to go through the thermally broken issues of proving
Right.
that to the local municipality. So
All right. Now, the only way I could uh, see, explain, or at least visualize what an Audi versus an Innie, doing a lot of commercial work, you'd have like a exterior flush glazing to the exterior wall of the building, be it concrete, block, brick, whatever it might be. But generally would be an aluminum frame that the glazing is actual. The frame is big, and the glazing is actually set out farther of the frame. But
yeah,
that's again the different issues. The
and that might even be a frame flangeless window, correct? And
yeah, they
in
would
that
normally
commercial
be.
situation,
Yeah, they would
yeah,
normally be. We
which
tried the
throws a whole nother thing in there.
yeah, we tried setting windows with they were vinyl windows, but doesn't matter. They had nailing flanges on it, and setting those on the outside face of the styrofoam, that doesn't work. The
Mm,
the the screws are what you're hoping holds the window in place, and it doesn't work.
yeah,
So by the time you
no,
end up expanding the jam out that far to put the window out past the styrofoam subsiding, it just became a big issue, big problem.
yeah, yeah, and
You
that's
don't
what
have any
we.
of your details that you could pull up and share, do you?
That's what I was looking for actually while we're sitting here talking. And I see John's actually pulled up uh, a picture on his
Yeah, he's got
screen. I don't know.
some fancy video software going like, mm-hmm.
I know he's all
I do.
getting fancy.
Was that
That's just a Google search looking for Innies and Outies. It's always been a struggle to figure out how you are going to attach a window. And in this case, even though there's thermal bridging, they put a 2x around the opening, the depth of the foam, which
okay?
then allows them to do, I think, an Outie window.
And so the benefits of one or the other, I
Yeah.
I don't have an answer because I'm not familiar with it. But those that have used it, Vicky, John, what are really the benefits of the location of the window?
Whichever you can teach the people to do best. Oh, Vicky, you're muted.
I'm going to say
Okay.
that in the passive house world, that it's almost unequivocally considered a requirement to do an Innie in order to get, like, you're required to do a calculation on the psi install of the thermal bridge coefficient. You literally have to model that in order to provide that for your certification criterion. And so you're typically doing extremely thick walls, like even down in Texas, where it's warm. I assume that you're doing at least a 10-inch thick wall. Up here in central United States and Colorado, we're doing walls that are 15, 18 inches thick. And you, instead of having your window aligned with your framing, that, your framing has a thermal conduction coefficient of, like, say R1 per inch, versus whatever your insulation is, you want to align your window framing with your insulation so you don't create excessive, like, stacked conductive elements. And it doesn't really matter if it's wood or if it's fiberglass or whatever. You're physically trying to unlink those things. So if you have a thick wall, unless of course you're doing a really thick foam exterior, and then you're just trying to reduce the connections between between your framing material, between your concrete material. So if you're doing like, you know, in Florida, if you were physically connecting that to your masonry, you have the frame of the window that's got a bunch of conduction, you have the frame of the buck that you might be mounting to. And so you'd want to like physically misalign those to make sure you don't have conductive elements stacked. I was just going through some different like stuff, trying to see if I could find examples of that. And so if you're, let me see with my camera, if you're looking at walls that are like crazy thick, you pull that into the interior in order to misalign your conductive elements. And the only corollary to that is, for myself, I actually hate doing a window like that because your drainage plane, like if you're using a flanged window, it's cheaper to install, it's faster to install. So if you can screw from a flange, that is at least a first level flashing, you know, just because you have this like metallic or vinyl shape to screw to, it at least gives you some amount of kick out, because when you push that window inside, you have that windowsill all the time that can like have standing water. If you don't have a good pan shape, you know, and if you care about that thermally decoupling issue, then you're definitely not trying to run a pan into the inside of your window, because that's going to create a crazy conduction to the inside. So, I mean, I don't know that there's a right or wrong way to do it, but there's definitely the thermal issue and the drainage plane issues are the two, and there's the shading issue. So if you're down in Florida, you obviously, if you pull it to the inside, you end up getting a little bit more, you know, shading from the south, so you're reducing overheat.
So Jason, what you're saying is that, if I understand it correctly, just I'm going to put it a little my simple mind, keeping the continuity of the insulation going all the way to the rough opening of the window, letting the window be beyond your primary insulation material.
Including in fact that some people actually will wrap insulation around windows. There's an outfit in Kansas that's called Architectural Glazing something or other. They make this smart window, and it's actually designed to have you overlap. Like it has cork or something on the flange of your window, and it's designed to overlap your insulation. So if you're doing like, you know, an exterior foam surface, you actually pull it several inches over the top of the glazing in order to thermally decouple it as much as possible. And unfortunately, there's all this complexity, because once you start overlapping those layers, as you get moisture moving behind it, right, you have all this capillary action that can pull stuff sideways. Yeah, it's always, to me, it's lots of scariness both directions. If you pull it in and you have layers of flashing, all kinds of skins that can pull water inward into your wall, you have rot issues, right? And that's just as scary as trying to be efficient. So,
yep, I wouldn't want to do that. What kind of R values are you having to shoot for when you're doing that in Colorado?
Like for the window or the side install or the insulation in general?
Well, you have really thick walls, which creates a window problem.
So the regular wall that I like to do is an R57 wall. And we're doing like regularly R100 plus like ceilings, attics. The craziest window I've got sitting next to me is a 5-layer window that's an R, I think 14 window. It's got I think 5 interior films, and we, you know, just normally use like triple glaze or quadruple glaze stuff. So
sounds expensive.
Yeah, it does. Jason, are you doing passive house criteria or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a big difference. And the reason I put this slide up was that in the Pacific Northwest, we don't have the same energy requirements as some of the parts of the country do, but they're pushing us that direction. And 2x6 walls have been with me my entire career. And it's a little frustrating now to have to, put foam on the outside and deal with these Innie Outie issues. So I found this company in Idaho, small company that's called Raycor Sips, and they do this polyisocyanate infused wall panel that's 2x6 and R42. And that alone is well over our local energy code, except for the thermal bridging piece, where you've got 2x6s. So the company made this staggered stud, where they've got 2x4s at 24 inches on center, and they're staggered inside outside, so there's no thermal bridging, and that's still an R40 panel. And now with the other programs or other exterior insulations like InSoFast, you can get some pretty darn high R values with only a standard 2x6 wall and another 2.5 inches of exterior insulation. So it's finding the right detail.
There's another SIPS product out there. Most of the SIPs I've seen in the past have been, instead of a 2x member between panels, have been like 7/16 OSB strips that creates kind of like a tongue and groove for the inside and outside. So you have foam of whatever type, and there are people using different things, but you have foam to foam instead of stud to SIPS panel, because there's that thermal bridging right through that stud, whether it's a 2x4 or a 2x6 or an 8, whatever it might be. But that's the ones I've been most accustomed to. And then you put an adhesive tape between the styrofoam, the XPS or whatever they're using, and that way you have a air gap seal at that panel joint at the same time. So that takes care of part of that problem of putting the window beyond and having insulation overlap, because your only joint of convection through that window is through the frame itself and the rough opening gap of the window frame.
So I found a few photos. I'm trying to figure out. I wanted to show you guys a picture.
Yeah, Kevin. Kevin,
Yeah.
I've made you a presenter, which means you should now have a black toolbar going down the left side of your screen.
Oh, yes, yes.
The second icon down is the folder icon. If you click on it, then there should be a green button in the bottom right that'll allow you to upload files.
Nice. Okay, let me see how I can do this then. Perfect. All right. And then I've also found a video, but the video's on my Instagram. I could just drop a link to that. It shows more in depth the rain screen on top of the polyiso, as well as the flashing detailing, and how we've got all that with some, my lovely voice explaining how it's all done.
If you want to show the video, just down at the bottom, or I think it's the fourth icon down on the left is your share screen icon, and then you can just choose which screen to show the video on.
Oh, yeah, that'll be perfect then. All right, hold on.
And if there's any audio, you want to pick the show whole screen or show entire screen, and then at the bottom there'll be a button that you have to slide over to make sure that the audio plays.
Perfect. Entire screen. There. Also share system audio. There we go. Okay.
Well, but the rain screen will go right up against this window buck out here, and it's flush. It's perfect. So we did an 1.5 inch window buck, because we were going to do 1 inch of exterior insulation plus another 1/2 inch of rain screen, and show you real quick little details on the window here. And I don't know if you can see this really.
The next one,
Our window.
this
So
is
we didn't
amateur,
put anything on them yet
videography.
except the tape. So we've got our buck out right here. That's 1.5 inches by 3 inches. And then we got our window flange. It's nice and taped right now. We're taped on top of the buck. And then we're gonna also put this really, really cool flashing detail right up on top here. I've still got some bends to do, but this is gonna get taped across the top. So when it's all said and done, you'll have insulation on top of here as well. And then it'll look just like a normal wall. You'll never know there's insulation and a rain screen behind it unless you come back and watch these videos. So, but this will, any bulk water that gets behind our siding, it's going to run down, kick out, come over the window. Don't have any chance of it going in behind the window or behind the bucking. Good job of sealing our windows on the inside and on the out, but we left the bottom open so that it, or when, not if, but later in life, if any water does make its way back there, it has a path to come out. Our window seal is actually at about a 5-degree angle right here, so that any water that gets behind the window will kick out and run out. If it gets back up in here, it's gonna find its way out instead of into the building. So really cool. Excited to bring this to you guys. Stay tuned.
So that rain screen coil right there is actually from Keen Building Products, and it's awesome. It comes on 25-foot rolls. You just use a hand slap stapler to put it on. Super easy to install. It was easy to teach the guys how to do it. And then this was as we were doing it. So these are our 2x4 rips and the buck that we added. It's nailed and then screwed. And then here we're prepping the air sealing tape. And then let's see. Here's another just close-up angle after we got it done. And then let's see. And this is another house that we did the exact same thing on. We've got on this one we did the zip system stretch tape at the bottom for the seal. We pulled it and went all the way down around our buck. So kind of cool. A little bit of extra detailing, little bit by a lot of it, but you've got a lot of protection in this style of window. Even if you did an Innie versus an Outie, it's, in my opinion, which one can your on-site personnel, which one are they more comfortable with? Which one can they get done correctly? So, because you can write all the detail you want, but if they can't perform it on site, what's the point? So,
Kevin, that mesh material you're talking about that you use, is that just you put that just around the window? Or do you skin the whole house with that for your water barrier?
Yeah, we ran that. That's Keen Easy Fur is the name of it, and we ran that around the whole house. We did a top strip and then a bottom strip at the top and bottom of the wall, and then every 16 inches on center, we ran a strip. And then as needed, as our siding joints met up at different places, we could just add a piece for that joint. Really, really easy to work with material. You cut it with a razor knife, nothing crazy.
Yeah,
And
I've never
it's,
seen it used on the wall. I've used it behind brick at the brick sill to keep the weep holes
yep,
clean. I've
yeah,
never seen it
yeah, I
used
do the
on the
same.
vertical wall.
So yeah, we actually we started doing that on our brick because uh, you know, there's there's no such thing as a clean mason when it comes to doing mortar work,
Yeah,
and this just helps them not have to worry so much about it.
yeah.
So
They usually throw that little bit of extra mortar down the air gap, the
yeah,
airspace before they get some more mortar. They
yep,
fill up
yep,
they fill the whole core up.
yep.
Okay.
I've I've wanted to use that Benjamin rain slicker. Um, I haven't got to use that yet. I have used the core event strips, and those are nice. The the only thing I didn't like about the core event is we can't get it locally, so we have to special order it. And you know, I don't know if you've ever ordered material, but you think you order enough, and then you're short. So you, you always end up waiting if you can't get it locally. You're waiting on more. So bayonet.
Now, I saw on that one photo you had you used the OSB. Did you
Mhm.
paint that, or did you water seal that before after it was up, or
The blue one.
yeah, it was gray,
Yeah,
bluish gray.
yeah. That is actually LP's Weather Logic. Uh,
Okay,
it's extremely similar to zip sheathing.
right.
It's an impregnated WRB on the OSB itself. Um, we actually, when we were building that house in particular, there was a issue at one of the Texas plants for zip. They had a fire in their drying kiln, and it shut them down. And they were 2 months before they could get more product out. So we had to scramble, and I didn't want to do a roll-on product. I've done them before. They're very messy, um, and it's hard to. It's a lot of extra labor, really. I mean, that's all it is.
Mhm.
It's super easy to put on. It's just messy, um, and it's another trip around the whole building. You know, if you can knock it out with something that's a 2-in-1, you know, sheathing and WRB, then all you're doing is taping seams at that point.
Right. That's why zip wall is very popular.
Very popular. Yep. So
John's showing a bunch of
the
slides.
LP product,
Yeah.
yeah, the LP product was very nice, easy to work with, just like the zip board. So
Huh.
they've got their own line of tapes, of course. They've got their own line of liquid flashings. Um, I've really started to enjoy working with the Proseco line of flashings and sealants. Um, just it's easy for me to get locally,
Right.
and I on the inside of those windows there, um, because we're trying to meet passive house air tightness. On the inside of those windows, we used Proseco air dam all the way around the inside for our actual air sealing, which also doubled on the bottom as an actual dam to prevent any water from pushing back into the
Right.
house.
Gotcha.
So
Huh. John, what's that detail
actually,
you got
it's same
showing there?
price.
John's got a big detail of a windowsill. But she's muted,
Oh,
I
you're
think.
muted.
Sorry.
There you
Someone
go.
just posted a picture of their Audi window, and I was looking at the trouble people go through to prevent this thermal bridging, you know,
There
with
we go.
insulation everywhere. So it seems like a hot mess to me when you start looking at some of these, you know, super thick walls that, you know, are common in some of the other areas of the town, like their country, like Jason's, where you really have to pursue some form of um, overall thermal bridging report on the entire wall as a system. You know, I'm an old guy, and you know, we live in
So
an
just
area
know that
where,
wall you're looking at is called a Larson truss.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, we like leaky homes because they bring in fresh air. And I often joke with the officials that I can do all this to the house to make it super tight and seal it up, but the moment my wife gets in there and she wants fresh air, all those doors and windows are going to open. Doesn't matter if it's winter, summer, you know, they're all going to open. So are we going to start closing the windows and make them like commercial buildings so you can't open them? So where do we stop? It's a little frustrating, you know, from my perspective.
Yeah, and I feel you because I grew up in a house that, yeah, it was a pretty day outside. We'd open the windows, let the fresh air in.
Mhm.
And the house that I just built, I'm honestly hoping they never want to because it'll be so comfortable inside. Um, and we've got a fresh air, ERV that'll be constantly bringing in fresh filtered air. But I know they're going to
And
want to open the windows, and that's totally
can
fine.
can
But at
that
least
take
when they
care of
shut
the
them, they'll
smell?
be able to quickly control it. Oh, go ahead.
It's the smell, internal smell, and I don't have the nose.
Yeah,
My wife had got the nose of a hound dog, and you know, if I pass gas, all the windows and doors open. You know, so I'm sure it's not just me, but you know, a sealed environment is definitely going to exacerbate that. And then you got to chase it with air exchanges. Is that enough?
yeah,
It really
yeah.
never
It's got to
is.
be a balanced. It's got to be a balanced air system, and you got to use all letters of HVAC. So the H, the V, the A, and the C. You can't just do one and hope it covers all. But and then we've yeah, I mean you're gonna cook bacon and it's not gonna linger as much in my kitchens because they've got constant ERV exhaust going on. So after you turn the vent hood off, this ERV is running 24/7 at 20 to 30 CFM uh, in and out. And if you needed to boost it, you could boost it up to 100 if you want. But yeah, I mean it's gonna you're people are going to live in the house the way they want to live in the house. And my goal is when they do shut the doors in the evening and the windows and say that it's a nice day like it is today. It's 74 outside, but it's 80% humidity in Houston here. um, when they shut those doors, they'll be able to control their humidity inside uh, rather quickly than in a leaky house like the one I live in that's built in 1983. I have to crank the AC down for hours and hours and hours just to get the humidity levels down. And then by the time that's accomplished, my wife is sitting there bundled up in a blanket with sweatpants on, and I'm comfortable, but she's not. So I hear
My
you.
my office room is near the front door. And when it's nice, if it's summer, I'm a summer person. I have that door open with the screen shut. I don't care. I don't care if the flies come in. I don't care what. I need to feel that connection to the outdoors. And I don't care how tight my house might be. And it's not, it's kind of leaky, but we've got a whole house filter. We've upgraded a lot of stuff, but I need that connection to the outdoors. If I could put my window on my office is on the front porch. If I could put a roll up door and I could just roll out my desk to the front porch to work there in the summertime, I would be a happy camper. So I'm kind of with you on the idea of, do we really want to never open our windows and doors? No, I I couldn't live like that. I just couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really depends on your environment too, because we get probably 3 to 4 weeks out of the full year where you would want to let the outside come in when it's not raining yellow pollen and it's not 100,000 degrees with 100% humidity. Um, so it really depends on your environment. Because whenever, when I lived back in West Texas, we didn't get a lot of rain, but we got a whole lot of dust. So we'd have, dust on everything in the house, even without opening windows. And it's like, where does this come from? And it's now I know it's just because the house was so leaky as far as air tightness. And then, but I get it. It's not everyone's preferred, and we do build houses with extremely nice outdoor living areas, so that you know you want to go experience outdoors. You've got a whole outdoor setup with kitchen. You know, if you want to open up the big sliding glass back door, open it up. Let it in. But at the end of the day, when you want to close it, the other, 300 days out of the year, you've got the option to do so. So
Well, I have one comment, and this is about innies or outies.
yeah,
That my preference, if I have to go with the super thick walls, is always going to be an outie. Not only for the ease of maintaining the water integrity from the outside, but the interior side, we just love to use the sills. I mean, if we can get a
oh yeah,
4, 5, 6, 7, 8-inch wide sill, clients love that. I even have extended them back in the olden days. I would actually add extended sills for plants and other things, so that they could
yeah,
put stuff on them. So I'm definitely a fan of the outie window. It just seems to feel better on the inside if you think about some of the old French stone buildings with those deep window wells that they've got, viewed from the
yeah,
inside. It has just a better feel all the way around. Plus, you don't have to worry about water integrity here, building
yeah.
something so complicated as this. So
Oh yeah,
simplicity,
yeah. It can get very complex.
yeah, easily. If you're chasing those thermal bridging, like Jason was talking about, or even Kevin, is that there's an awful lot you have to do to these windows that can go
Mhm.
wrong. And so
Yeah,
the fewer things that can go wrong, the easier it is to sleep, both for the contractor and for us when it comes to liability. I may be wrong, though. That's just me.
no, I mean I prefer it. It's easier for my guys to do, and it's from a warranty standpoint. I I like that clear demarcation line of here's where the water is going to go. I don't have to worry about it going in on anything. It's straight line. So
Kevin,
yes,
um,
sir.
where did you live in West Texas?
Abilene.
Abilene? Well, I
Hmm.
was in Amarillo, and we certainly had, you know, wind and dirt and dust. Whenever I moved to Austin, I saw my first weather report, and the it said 0, and so I thought, oh man, the weather gauge. I mean the wind gauge is broken because I'd never seen 0 like in my life. Um,
Yeah.
But whenever I used backtracking here, um, like Dow foam, um, we just cut up a bucket of blocks, of just um, half-inch plywood or OSB, and go around and put uh, put a few blocks around the window openings, and we wouldn't
Yeah.
completely strip it all the way around. We just put on blocks so the window would not compress the foam, and so
Yeah.
that worked quite well. Um, and then there's always been a debate, and now that we have this group here, um, and I framed thousands of houses that are mostly all burnt now because the panhandle burned down. Okay,
Yeah.
so um, um, in the installation of a window, I always installed wood windows sitting on the frame sill. Any other type of window, I always jammed them to the top.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Is that the consensus amongst this group or not?
I still put shims underneath and keep it off the seal. And maybe it's just the old school teachings from the past, but I I want it to be where I'm centering. Well, I'm not sitting on any one particular member with the window. The window is, flanged. It's screwed in to the framing members, um, and I've always been leery of, especially setting the bottom seal because it could see more water than the top header. And if it sees water and that wood expands at all, or any ancillary material that goes on top of that wood later, you could get a frowny face on your window and have an issue with it closing. And that was what I was always taught was, all right, shim it up off of that, give yourself an air gap, pull those shims after you screw it in, and you've got that space up underneath there for the what if stuff expands.
Yeah, I think if you use the idea that water flows downhill and you give it some place to go and you
Yep.
direct it where you want it to go instead of where it's going to find its own path, you'll be okay. Keeping it up
Yep.
off the framed sill of the opening and having it either wrapped with the tape or whatever it might be, but giving the water a direction that you want it to go to. And that's,
Yep.
I mean, I think a lot of this came out of the issues that came up a few years back with EFIS and walls deteriorating with EFIS. The EFIS itself is a good product. It's the installation that really shows up as
Yeah.
the problem and people cutting corners. But I'll bet you $10 to a dime that you take a brick house and you pull the brick off from around a window of an older house. You pull the brick off around it, and then you start to see where that water has gotten into the same wall. It's not the window's fault. It's not the brick's fault. It's the installation fault, and that's where you run into them.
Yep.
So it's, again, I always try to keep the idea of water's going to flow downhill, and I want it to go where I want it to go, not where it wants to go.
Yep.
On the brick ledges that they run here in brick pockets are 5.5 inches. Traditionally, for my first 30 years in the business, we used 4.25. But it's too big a chore for the concrete man to rip a 2x6 down to 4.25. So why 4.25? You ask. Because that way, whenever you butt a brick against a window, you don't have to have a return on that brick. That brick butts against that window, and there's no little return brick for this water infiltration or anything else. So, have you ever heard of 4.25 brick pockets, 4.25 brick ledges?
Yeah, I have. Biggest problems that you run into is if they don't order the window with a brick mold. If you get some of the main brand aluminum clad windows, for instance, they usually have a brick mold. But people are playing with all kinds of brick thicknesses these days. And the next thing you know, if you leave a 5-inch space for brick airspace and subsiding, and they use a certain brick, then you end up with, if you don't have the brick mold on the window, you end up with about a 1/2 inch of gap between the back of the brick and the face of the window. So usually I think that comes up when somebody orders, selects like a queen size brick versus a modular. But that's the problem you have to look at. And if I'm talking about going to brick, it's make sure that on the window schedule that brick mold is required. Otherwise, you just end up with a problem all the way around.
Well, don't. Um, I have never seen a window that didn't have a flange all the way around that was not equivalent to the the uh, the width of a brick mold.
Um,
A Lenco, I mean, I'm talking the
yeah.
cheapest window made, man. Okay, I mean they
Well,
all
yeah. Well,
brick.
vinyl windows won't have a brick mold. Hardly ever. Aluminum windows usually do not have a brick mold in the frame, integral to the frame. So it's all of a sudden you have to install one, and that's tough to do with a vinyl or a aluminum clad window. But Pella windows, Marvin, Anderson, you order that, you can order them with brick mold. And I'm sure some of the others, Wenco, Geldwin, Windsor, uh, most of those, I think you can also get brick mold integral to their claddings.
Have you guys?
All windows
Oh,
come
go ahead.
with a projection that is equivalent to the uh, thickness of a brick mold.
Some might, I don't know.
I've never seen one that didn't ever.
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
Seriously.
Oh man, it's impossible. You couldn't be older than me. Okay.
I've seen them.
All right.
Have you guys seen that new Pella window they just came out with? They're going to be releasing it in the summer. It has it's a flangeless window, so it has these clips, much like a European style. But you remove these little protection strips, and out pops a flange that's made for taping and sealing around. It's super unique to Pella. It'll make new construction installs, it'll make really, really easy. Retrofit installs, I think it would be, you know, a benefit there. I just don't do retrofit. So
Are they doing that? Are going to be part of the frame already installed?
correct.
Because that Pella Windows has a groove in the outside cladding that
Yep.
that the nail flanges go into.
These
All right.
are their new it's called Steady Set.
Okay.
So I got to see them at IBS and play around with them, and super
So they probably got caught by somebody putting their windows in without the nailing flange and decide we better put a integral nailing flange in the window itself when they order.
yeah, these are yeah, because these have the interior screw-on clips, kind of like the have y'all ever used the Schuko window?
No.
It's a Euro style triple pane tilt and turn. It's like the Cadillac of windows, but it's same clip style system as that. But
What was the name?
Schuko, um, and it's SCHUCO is the I'll type it in here. Euro style.
There's probably more window manufacturers than there are Doan's pills.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of like it. These European styles are starting to become popular over here. And hopefully they'll start becoming a little bit more affordable because they're super, like, if I had to call it over engineered, I mean, in a good way, like that's how I feel like most of these are. They've thought of everything that could and would happen with a window and then changed it. So
I recently
for the best.
designed a project for a gentleman that wanted glass walls, and um, in where I am, a glass wall is going to cost you, 16 feet long. In that vicinity, it's going to cost 25,000 bucks. But he got his in China, and I went and looked at them, and they were great, and he paid 5,000 bucks a piece for them. I'm going, and they're 16 feet long. I'm going, wow, man, that's crazy good.
Wow.
But they're in China, so if anything ever goes wrong, then you're up a creek. So I'm going to try to
You're,
stay away from any Chinese anything. Okay.
you probably up a creek
Yeah.
too if you're waiting for shipping.
Yeah. I was like, that's you're dealing with, and that's on these other like Schuko windows. You're getting them. I believe they're out of Germany. Trying to find it real quick while I'm on here.
While
But
you're looking
yeah,
at my favorite ones are the Marvin upper line of the Marvin windows. That's probably my favorite window.
yeah, Marvin makes a really nice window.
Yeah.
So, actually, Schuko has a U.S. side. They've got a Connecticut location.
Hmm.
So
Cool.
that's good.
Are they triple pane, double pane? What are they?
You can get double or triple.
Or get double, triple, probably get the same as anybody else with the glass and the coatings, reflective coatings
Yep.
and UV and all that.
Yeah. And like there's actually a company. Larry. You're in Austin. There's a company local to you called Euro Vista Windows. They let's see. They take. I'm trying to think of the name of the. It's a German brand. Um, but they order all the parts and pieces, and they're a certified assembly or manufacturer type situation.
Yes.
Um, and it's Comerling. Comerling is the window manufacturer, but they order the parts and pieces and build here in Austin, or here in there in Austin, here in Texas, and then they get the glass, whatever your specs that you want it to be. They get it from Cardinal Glass out of Dallas. So I just shared the link to them as well. So,
Thank you.
and they make an American style and the Euro style. So they can do a single hung or a tilt turn.
Well, Larry, you said you were the oldest one here. I remember installing windows back when the way we had to deliver them to the project site was with these saddles that we created out of leather that would carry the windows on each side of a donkey. What a pain on the ass that was.
Yeah, come on. No.
Well, we're at the end of the hour.
Oh, wow.
This has been great. This has been, I think, one of the most productive discussions we've had. I've learned a heck of a lot. And been making notes on all these different products to look up. This is fantastic. Thanks everyone for your comments and your experience and your willingness to share everything.
And I can't take credit for my my window install method on the buck out. I got that from Steve Basic and Matt Reisinger. I stole that from them and modified it to my requirements. So
So I guess the consensus is the Innie versus Outie is a a personal preference.
It is. And what I've also, and I totally forgot about this. Speaking of Jason with his incredibly, 10-inch or greater walls, if you have an Innie in that 10-inch wall, yeah, there you go. So
Wow.
if you have an Innie set into that wall, you got to think of your thermal, your solar heat gain coefficient. You're going to have shading provided even without an overhang. So depending on your passive house, yeah, it's a little, uh, but depending on your passive house requirements, you could also take that wall and make it an architectural detail so that the wall angles into the window. There's just lots of fun things you can do with windows in general. But go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just gonna say like that's a good point. Like so a bunch of the windows like sills that I've done are pushing a foot like of a bench space in front of it. And I've had architects like I don't like to do this when I'm designing because I'm a simplistic, pragmatic person that wants stuff easy to build. But having big flares or rounded flares that give you like cooler light angles. There's a lot of ways to play with design if you're trying to do it stupid thick.
Yeah. Yep. And yeah, you can keep it nice and square. You can flare it out and call attention to it. So I like trying to hide that I've got anything behind there. If you walk up to my house that we just built, you're not going to know that it's got exterior insulation. You're not going to know it's got a built-in rain screen behind it. It looks like the house next door, but performs 10 times better than the house next door. So
I know we're going over in time, but Kevin, you bring up a point that I wanted to ask a question about. When you're putting the exterior insulation on the styrofoam board or whatever, and leaving a water drainage plane, so to speak, at the bottom, how are you closing off the bottom of that wall assembly?
I don't. My WRB, my zip system, that is Fentrum taped with Sega Fentrum tape to the concrete. And then I overhang. Everything else is outside of my air barrier, outside of my WRB. So I
Uh,
don't need to worry about closing it off. Now, I do take a, a cheap window screen roll and I'll roll it across the bottom and across the top for a bug screen. And I'll keep bugs from, eating the polyiso because apparently it tastes really good to some types of bugs. But
yeah.
um,
Uh,
so
One reason I asked about that, watching some of the videos a couple years ago. I don't remember, Steve, if you saw this or not. During the code hearings, they're talking about forest fires and where do the embers collect. And they actually showed how the embers in a forest fire will collect it between the grade at grade of a house and circulate there and then go up the wall. So my
yeah,
thought is okay, if the embers are circling there and getting into that cavity, is how do you? That would be my concern during all of this. I mean,
I bet Jason has something on that. He's in wildfire territory.
Yeah, so I was gonna say that like what that product that Kevin showed from Keen and also like the rain slicker, or there's some of the I don't know the core events and that kind of stuff you can use to put at the bottom and around here we're often using it because if you're gonna go 3/4 of an inch thick, like bees and stuff will nest in there. But
right?
there's also a new product that I feel like came out this year. It's called Vulcan Vent or something like that. I forget. It's named after one of these old Roman gods or something like that. And they're designed to actually work similar to like radiation dampers where they'll snap closed in like once you hit, like something like 150 degrees, because one of the common ways for forest fires to infiltrate a home is they get sucked up into your attic they enter underneath of a deck on a raised thing, or your windows explode because it heats up the outer pane of glass and they shatter out. But so they've got this new venting product that works where they'll have, you know, a 3/4 of an inch channel or something like that, and they'll snap close just like they will in like an apartment complex where you're moving air from unit to unit. I've not personally used them, but I've seen some of my, you know, local friends that are starting to explore some of those options just because, you know, it's the new thing. So
Yeah. And just like Alan just posted, so Vulcan Vents was the name of that vent. And Alan just posted that, you know, the rain screen zone is neutral air. It's supposed to be a convective airflow. So, you know, as the air heats up, it should flow up and out, which is what we want, except in the case of a fire. But yeah, it's definitely something that needs some more study. And I know in fire prone areas, I follow a builder that's out of Colorado as well. Him and his wife, they do a lot of exterior siding, exterior insulation with Rockwool products. And with Rockwool, um, you could actually go with no rain screen on top of the Rockwool because it's going to breathe. It's going to let stuff, you know, let itself dry out. So that's been one thing that they've been doing. Um, so and Rockwool, you know, I don't know if you've ever messed with that stuff, but you could put a torch to it and it's just not going to burn. It's molten rock at one point in time. So, oh, you're muted, Mike.
I think New Wool, there's a brand of rock wool that this, but it's sprayed on instead of in bats, in preformed bats. Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you all so much.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
Bye, everyone.
Oh,